Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to this SRA members webinar. I'm Lee Chan. I'm one of the SRA trustees. I'm a social policy and behavioural researcher, currently working with government at an agency called the UK Health Security Agency. But I've had previous roles within local government, charities, and the research agency side. It's great to see so many colleagues and SRA members registered today for this webinar from across all the different sectors. For anyone who is newer to the Social Research Association, we're the professional association for social researchers. We exist to support, connect, and champion the profession through training, ethics and standards, events just like this, our annual conference, and a thriving community. Two of our strategic priorities are to support the profession to grow and thrive and adapt, and to encourage a diverse, skilled workforce. So this webinar sits squarely in that space, in those two strategic objectives. Now, today's topic is job hunting in social research, and it's so timely. The market is evolving, employers' expectations are shifting, and the ability to position your skills clearly matters at every single career stage. We're joined by Abi Blank today, a senior researcher with over 15 years experience, who's very adept at placing talent across the research and evaluation roles in charities, education, the wider public and social sector. Abi brings practical, honest insights on what employers are really looking for, how to tailor your CV, and where opportunities are emerging. I've come across Abi quite a lot over the last couple of years. We've had quite a few nice little chats. She's not only very professional, but she's very warm, and her advice is very grounded. Just quickly on housekeeping, we are recording right now, and this recording will be made available after the session, along with Abi's slides and any resources that might be put in the chat. We'll make sure they're repeated afterwards, so you can follow them if you don't have time to click on them while we're talking. Also, there are opportunities, lots of opportunities. We're going to leave about hopefully 20 minutes at the end for questions. So please take the opportunity to ask Abi any questions, post them in the little tab at the bottom that says Q&A, and we'll try and cover as many questions later. And lastly, after I close the webinar at 3, we're going to move straight on to the AGM. Now, it would be absolutely wonderful if you could stay on for that. It's only for 15 minutes. Your participation as members really matters here, because your votes help us vote trustees in, and they do the work that is important for furthering the SRA's work. So please lend your support if you can, particularly with the voting. I personally would be very grateful for your support on that. And I think without further ado, I'm going to hand over for Abi so she can give us her insights into what's happening with job hunting at the moment.
Great, thanks Lee. Thank you for a lovely intro to me. So welcome everyone to this session on job hunting in the social research sector. I was asked to do this by Tina, who's the CEO, a number of months ago. And as Lee said, it is very timely. Over the last kind of few years, I've really seen it become a very, very competitive market. And I've had numerous conversations with candidates and clients about the change of the market, and to try to kind of understand kind of your research skills and how to position them and to stand out in a highly kind of competitive market. So just as an overview, I'm going to kind of go through understanding the social research job market, what employers are looking for, CV and application strategies, my insights, and also, you know, other insights from recruiters who I've worked with over the years, different kind of career pathways that you could choose, and some interview tips. So, first off, I'm sure there are a variety of different people who have joined. So, people who come from private agencies, the likes of kind of Ipsos, Varian, or consultancies, or charities, or local and central government. There are a plethora of different roles across, a wide-ranging kind of sector, anything from kind of private agencies all the way up to kind of central government. What I have seen in the last, I would say, 10 years is a real growth in evaluation and impact research roles. So probably about 15 years ago, and I'm a researcher myself. My background is in research. I used to work at the Institute of Psychiatry, which was very academic, and then I worked for BMRB, which was then Kantar, which is now Varian, and then I worked as a healthcare researcher. And throughout my time of conducting research, evaluation was not a hot topic, and it really has evolved, I would say, in the last 15 years. For example, with the growth of the evaluation team at Ipsos, there used to be 2 people. There are now 85 people in that evaluation team. It used to be very much kind of qual and quant, and within the job market, there's a definite increase in the value of mixed methodological approaches, or somebody who has, not just taken a traditional qual path or not just taken a traditional quant path, but have kind of carried on in their career, whether they start off early and carry on being mixed methods. And you most probably have seen that it has become highly competitive at entry and mid level. So I have spoken to various kind of people who are at that mid-level research manager, associate director level manager, associate director level, who have said, I'm up against 10 other people. So things have really increased. So, as I mentioned before, you're probably from a variety of different backgrounds. You may be from academia, thinking to get into a research agency, or vice versa, or from agency to charity. So there are so many different organizations that hire social researchers. So large research agencies, there are specialist or specific kind of policy consultancies, there's charities and NGOs, there's obviously government departments, there's foundations, research institutes and think tanks, and most recently, in my previous role, I came across membership and regulatory bodies who definitely are on the lookout for researchers. They may not have the traditional title of quantitative researcher. They may come under the guise of program director. And then when you really look at the job specification, they're actually looking for kind of research skills. So there is a lot of crossover between the different kind of sectors, basically. So I used to headhunt a lot from government to go into private sector, and a lot of private sector wanted to get into government or wanted to get into charity. So if you have research skill set, it's very transferable across sectors. It's just how you position it is key, basically. So I would say currently in the market, skills that employers are looking for are qual and quant expertise, as I touched on before, mixed method capability, evaluation capability. So when I say evaluation, I talk to lots of different candidates who say, oh, I have experience in evaluation, but really specific employers are looking for different types of evaluation, whether it's social, economic, process, impact evaluation. It's sometimes not good enough just to have been involved overseeing an evaluation. You actually have to have hands-on kind of experience running evaluation, and I'll go on to that in a different slide. Project management is key. So private sector, often a researcher can be juggling and managing up to 8 to 10 different projects. Obviously with charities. So for example, I'm working with a charity at the moment, and they run 21 different programs across the community. And they're looking for an evaluation and learning person, and that person would be responsible for managing that. So there's probably a myth that if you worked for a charity, you'd be looking after less, but in fact, it sometimes can be a lot more. So obviously they're looking for people who have clear writing skills and reporting. So it's not just the ability to write a good set of slides for a debrief, it's really analysing and pulling out actionable insight. So lots of people that I have met over the years say to me, oh, I don't like that bit of the research process. And I think it's becoming more and more important that you have the full 360 experience of just conducting the research and then analysing the research and then writing it up. And more, what I have seen, it used to be at a very senior level that you had that stakeholder and client engagement, and that was always part of a job description at a senior level. But I've been seeing it more. Lots of organizations have become very meritocratic and very flat in structure. And, you can be kind of 2 years experience and having to go along to the government to sit in a meeting and understand what the government is trying to commission in a piece of research. So kind of stakeholder and client management and engagement is very important. Anything from kind of, troubleshooting to just being able to pick up the phone and really understanding the brief and challenging the brief and having that confidence behind talking to kind of, clients basically. So moving on to kind of methods and how you would want to kind of highlight your methods. I see so many CVs that just kind of say qual and quant experience. Or 10 years qual and quant experience. It's really important to pull out your type of experience that you've had, to go through the methods that you have used, whether it's survey, IDIs, and it can be triads, which is, 3, ethnography, deliberative techniques and community engagement as well is something that over the last kind of 5 to 8 years, I've really seen an increase. So people are just skilled in what they call shortened to delib techniques. Explain your role in the research process. Don't just put on your CV, I've been involved in, and conducting many research projects with children and young people. Actually explain in a bullet, I conducted 100 IDIs with 16 to 18-year-olds suffering from mental health problems. So actually expand as much as you possibly can, but remain kind of focused as well, explaining your actual role so an employer can understand your involvement in the process. Detail evaluation experience. So when people write on a CV, researcher and evaluator, actually detail the evaluation experience that you have had. So theory of change, randomized control trials, and the scale of evaluation. So I used to work very closely with a number of private research agencies, so the likes of kind of Ipsos and Varian, and also private consultancies. And one of the things that always stood out when employers rejected people was down to the scale of evaluation. So how many kind of, people, what types of evaluation projects were you involved in? Like the scope of the evaluation, how large the evaluation was. For example, you can run an evaluation for the government looking into the NHS and the NHS practices that could run for 3 years and talk to thousands of people to evaluate a particular service, whether it's in oncology or CAMS or something like that. So it's the scale of evaluation is very important as well to put in your CV, not just your experience, but also the scale. Mention tools. Lots of people just say, oh, SPSS, that's what I use, and that seems to be the most common. But obviously with the evolution of kind of AI and different tools, it's always worth listing out the different tools that you have used to analyze data and to demonstrate policy, your policy knowledge or your social impact. And I will go on to another slide. So just to kind of conclude or to sum up, so tailoring your CV, focus on research projects rather than list responsibilities, include your methods, the data size and your outputs, and then highlight the policy or the social impact. This is what I was talking about before. So often as researchers, we are very involved in the work that we do, and we don't actually realize that it's influencing policy and will change that policy in the future. So the research that we do, especially if it is commissioned by the government, and there's hundreds of different government departments, as a result of that research, policy will change. And you can be involved in that research for 6 months, and then 2 years down the line, you can be reading your newspaper and you can be like, that was me. I did that research. I conducted that. And that's the change in whether it's child benefit or access to mental health services. You actually have to put in your CV, if you have that policy expertise and knowledge and you've been involved in policy research, actually write this then involved a change in policy for the government and the date and what kind of policy it was. That's very, very important. And tailoring your CV, obviously, and this is a theme, and I'm sure I'll have lots of questions about this, whether it's good to have 5 pages or whether it's good to have 2 pages. I would say concise is good. It doesn't matter if concise takes you to 3 pages, but make it evidence-based. Don't just put claims of, involved in large-scale evaluations. What type of large-scale evaluations? So this is I guess, it was very difficult to write this slide and not to make it long, but the key themes that have come out for me, I would say in the last kind of 15 plus years with social researchers, whether you're an evaluator, a policy, have policy expertise or policymaker and a researcher, or you're coming into social research, often some CVs, and if you're coming from academia, some CVs can be read very academic. So I have received CVs and I have read hundreds of CVs in the past that can be 9 or 10 pages long, and they just come across as too academic, with little kind of applied context around it. So I would be wary if you're sitting in an academic institute and you're thinking, I really want to work in the private sector or a private consultancy, be very wary of listing every paper that you've been involved in and have been published, and don't necessarily think that academic references or academic speak will be easily accessible to a research agency. And obviously research agencies are hugely commercial and don't necessarily think that an academic could then transfer. So the more context that you put behind your CV, the better it is. Like I touched upon before, methods are not clearly explained. So clearly explain the methods that you have used, the type of methods. So whether they've been focus groups, have they been focus groups that have run globally, or are they at a local level or at a national level? Explain who's been in the focus groups. It's really showcasing the variety of different methods that you have, in your toolkit, basically. So also, there's no evidence of impact or outcomes of the research. So I often see in CVs, been involved in this, but then, the outcome of that research has not been mentioned. Just a one-liner on that, is very impactful. And it's like, oh, that's very interesting. That's very relevant to the work that we're pitching for, or that we're going to be pitching for, or that we've just won. So that person would be relevant to that. So that evidence of impact or the outcome of the research that you were involved with is very important. Often overly long or unfocused CVs. It never ceases to amaze me and surprise me that people still pay so much money to get their CV tailored and beautifully prepared. I've heard graduates paying, up to £200 to format their CV. They don't need to. It's just, you just need to be able to focus on the right things. So try not to make it overly long or unfocused. So really, taking into account everything that I've said about kind of, talking about your methods, your experience, the context, the scale. Definitely take time to tailor or bespoke your CV for each role. It's really, really important. Whether that's changing your profile at the top to relate to the role, or going through the different jobs that you've had and matching it with the job specification that you're applying for, and pulling out experience that that you have had in that job specification, but it doesn't mirror within your CV. Put it into your CV and definitely tailor your CV for each approach. In fact, I know very senior researchers who have a number of different versions of their CV. They have a very commercial one, they have a local government one, they have a central government one, and then say they're an evaluator, they have an evaluation one or an evaluator one. So don't feel scared to use different versions, because each version can contain, different information. So these are just some examples of, very, strong CV bullet points. So when I've said before that people say, oh, I've got experience in evaluation, and you think, really, have you? But if you write, led mixed methods evaluation of national youth programme, include the number of interviews, the approach, the length of time, that's what I would say qualifies as a good bullet. Design survey instrument and analyze data in R. So, that can, often in a CV it just says, experience in survey design. And you think, okay, so expand bullets is good, but keep it focused. So produced report informing local authority on a service redesign. And if you're able to, then, give the example. Obviously, if it is a piece of research that hasn't been published yet, be very careful too, because you don't want to put that in your CV if it's not in the wider world, wider society yet. And then another example, if you're, managing kind of fieldwork suppliers and research timelines, that's also very important to put, because you're not just doing the research. If you work for a small agency, you could be doing everything. So you could be doing the fieldwork suppliers, understanding the timelines, negotiating, bringing in respondents. So really put in your CV the full, everything that you've been involved, with. I don't know if I'm teaching, people, and people are online thinking, oh, I know this, but I just thought I would go through a typical kind of career path, because it's often very different if you've come from government or academia and you've come into the research world or a private research agency. And it's also very different if you're coming to work for an NGO or a charity. So I try to include different examples of kind of titles. So there's research assistant or junior researcher, that's at kind of entry level. Then you can go to kind of research executive or, junior researcher or researcher, they're often known as, or research officer, I've seen as well in charities. Then senior researcher or senior consultant, which is also known as an SRE in agency speak, so senior research exec. Then there's research manager, and then you go up to associate director, research director, and practice lead, head of research, head of evaluation, managing director, head of department. That's the typical path that you would follow, whether you're in academia, whether you're in the government, whether you're in the private sector. You often have to kind of start off at the beginning and obviously work your way up. But what I have seen, and I definitely have seen this more and more, are people wanting to be flexible and wanting to gain access into an organization and the willingness to go down a level. So it's like, I work for the private sector. I'm desperate to get into charity. How do I do that? I have no charity experience. At the moment, I'm an associate director within the private sector, but I want to work for this cause and I want to work for this charity. So I'm happy to look at kind of senior research or research manager roles. It's important to understand there can be a lot of movement between different levels. You can be an associate director for 8, 10 years and not even be a research director until you've had kind of 10, 15 years experience, and then all of a sudden you're a research director. The salaries can be very dramatically different, and in some organizations it's literally a step up of perhaps £4,000. So don't feel that if you're stuck in one role, one title, that you're not going anywhere. I have seen people who have been published, who've written books, who've, spoken in the government, and they're just a research manager, and that would be seen as kind of mid-level. And they've been a research manager, for 5 to 6 years. So that's just an overview of a typical kind of career path. I get this a lot. So this is agency versus charity versus government. So as a recruiter, lots of agency clients back in the day when I worked at another recruitment consultancy would say to me, oh, I don't want people from, I don't really want you to headhunt people from the government because, it's very slow in the government. The pace is very slow. And then government would say, oh, I worked in agency side and it was so boring and so slow. So there's a real kind of myth around how each sector works. But I would say, from my experience of working in an agency and also recruiting for agency is usually fast paced. You usually have multiple clients, multiple projects. There's definite commercial focus. So, and that can be a real kind of shock and, change for some people who are coming from academia or charity or NGO, to agency. It is a money-making unit, or department, and the turnover can be, really high for research and, for a research and evaluation team. And I think that's something to always be very wary of, that if you switch from academia to a private agency, it's a commercial environment. You are trying to win as many projects as you possibly can, because it is, in order to lift revenue, basically. And you have to reach targets. Just something to be aware of. So charity, and I've just started recently at Charity People, is often mission driven, evaluation and program learning, and it's often dependent on funding, basically. So I am recruiting at the moment for a charity, for an evaluation and learning manager, like I said at the very beginning, and they will actually be exceedingly fast paced, probably faster paced than agency, because they'll be looking after 21 different programs that are all within the community. So they're going to be juggling, managing that. So, but often the difference will be that it will be a mission driven. So whether it's a charity that's focusing on mental health, a charity focusing on education and young people, it's often driven by that charity's kind of mission and the want of kind of social impact. The government, and I'm sure Lee could probably add to this, but it's usually kind of policy evaluation, often have longer timelines, obviously larger kind of data sets, and like I said before, it's often around policy development and implementation. The government are commissioning research in order to inform policy change and to implement kind of development within a policy. They want to go out to society and find out, from Joe Public, what's happening, and then hopefully it will influence change within a policy. Next slide. Yes. So these are emerging opportunities that I've seen, and I've seen this kind of, I would say, really in the last kind of 5 to 8 years. So there's a lot more roles that are coming up within policy and program evaluation. Like I talked before about kind of charity, that type of program evaluation, and from membership and regulatory bodies as well. So, for example, the Royal College of Psychiatrists run a UK dementia program that is huge. It is UK wide, and there was a role there that I recruited for. It was called Program Director. But in fact, when I really looked into the job spec, a lot of it just required a very good quant analytical kind of skill set. So those types of opportunities, don't dismiss them and think, oh, I shouldn't really look at membership and regulatory bodies. They're not for me. They are, in fact, often really do recruit researchers and social researchers, but the titles are usually quite different. So always be sure to look at job specs in detail. Then there's obviously behavioural insights and behavioural science, and Lee can vouch for that. Then there's lots of opportunities within data integration and analytics. The social impact measurement as well is huge, and that's a lot around community engagement and deliberative techniques. So going out into the community and understanding the social impact that this, that the piece of research has had, or the implementation of different kind of policies within kind of society. What impact has that had? Participatory research. So the participants are actually able to influence, the type of research, the timing of research, and of course, research with the use of AI, something that I came across. And I was quite shocked when I attended the MRS conference, not last year, but the year before, that lots of agencies are using more and more tools to analyze data and even to interview respondents. And as I was a quali 25, 30 years ago, I found it interesting, hugely innovative, but also kind of quite alarming as well. But there are more and more emerging opportunities within kind of research and with the use of AI. Like this morning, for example, I saw that Savanta had just launched a new AI tool. And, that's going to be very popular. And lots of different research agencies have their own tool that they have developed. So, key sections, I would say, just to kind of sum up, I'm just conscious of time. So key sections for, within a CV would be professional summary with your methods expertise, selected research projects that you've worked on, methods and tools that you have used, so touching upon kind of, R and SPSS and all the different tools that you have in your toolkit. Publications and reports, really important. Even if you have only contributed to a little bit, your name will be on that publication, and reports have put that in your CV. Key achievements, I often like at the top under a profile. So I often say to write 3 lines about your profile. Next section, key achievement section, and then policy or program impact as well is also very important. If you're involved and you have policy expertise, definitely have that as a section. I touched upon this just a little bit about kind of common interview questions that I have seen fed back to me from candidates. They said, oh, they asked me some, quite interesting questions. So I've gathered my data. So, obviously tell us about a research project that you have led. One was, how do you choose appropriate methods, which I thought was quite interesting. The usual, describe a challenging stakeholder relationship. So always have examples of when you've managed a challenging stakeholder at 1 minute. And I've got 1 minute left. How have your findings influenced decisions, and how do you manage competing deadlines? There are some common kind of interview questions. I will quickly go on to this slide. I think I've really covered it, to be honest. What research employers want most? I think I've done that. What makes a CV stand out? I've done that. Mistakes candidates often make. I think I've covered that. And advice for researchers moving roles. I talked about kind of crossing over. It's really about focusing on transferable skill sets and giving, as many examples as you possibly can. And they are my key takeaways. And I think I will hand over now to Lee, because I obviously want lots of time for questions.
Thank you so much, Abi. There was so much in there.
I know.
Thanks for wrapping up quickly, because there are 15 questions.
Right, okay.
I'm going to try and bunch some of these together. So I'm really sorry to people if we lose the nuance in some of these, but I think some of them go together quite a lot. And it is coming back to the question of switching sectors. And I think people probably want just a little bit more detail on that. So there's one question about, is it feasible for someone with a PhD to move into applied social research? So that's one example. And there's another example of someone moving from the charity sector and worrying that they've just done small scale work. Is that sellable to a different sector? And then there's also people worried about being on the client side and moving on to a different context, and whether their management of research counts because they haven't run a project like hands-on for a long time. So there's quite a lot of questions bunched together about, has what I've done before, have I got any chance of repackaging that? And I think you alluded to that. I don't know if you wanted to talk about any of those specifics.
Yeah, I mean, I can. I mean, I've, over the years, I've talked to many kind of, academics or people with PhDs who want to move into the private sector or the charity sector, thinking about whether or not it's sellable to kind of the commercial and private sector. And then, client and, the fact that the client is commissioning research, but they haven't done hands-on research for, 5, 10 years. I think with all these themes, I think it's really important to be able to demonstrate your transferable skill sets. So even if you are commissioning research and you're working client side, but you've had previous research experience, I still think that's, just as it's possible to kind of put your kind of skill sets and your experience with the top of your CV. I think lots of people go straight in, they have their name and then they go straight into their kind of their work experience. And I think they say that a CV lands on somebody's desk and lasts for 7 seconds. I would hope that that is a stat and a myth, and I would hope that somebody would spend a little bit longer. But I see a real benefit in having a profile section and then a key achievements section or key skills and achievements section. And that is where you would list out all the different types of experience that you had. You may have a PhD, but you still have the hands-on research skills that would be needed. So you will have still, spoken to respondents. You will have done interviews. You would have done IDIs. You might have done, ethnographic kind of interviews. It's still all very transferable. It's just about highlighting if you were at a charity and you're applying for private or you're private applying for charity, it's really highlighting your policy expertise and also the fact that your passion for that particular cause. Say that you had worked for a private agency and you'd done lots of work around children, young people and families, and that had involved mental health research, and you thought, actually, I want to get out of the private sector and I want to work for a mental health charity, you would then look back on the last 5 years and think, what projects have I worked on that have focused on mental health, and bring those out and tailor them and put that into a CV. But I think with academics, it's about your transferable skill set and also your understanding of a commercial environment as well. I think that's very, very important. So say you were very senior and you were going to apply for a senior role in a private agency, you would have to be able to talk about your commercial awareness and being commercially aware and not just being kind of, academically kind of focused. I hope that helps. I hope that answers everything.
Thank you for trying to cover all three of those examples. Um, there's a couple of questions about, I'm trying to link them together. They probably shouldn't be, but I'm trying to cover as many questions as possible. One is about someone switching to social research at a later age, and what advice you would give to that person, or also someone who's coming back to social research or wants to after quite a long break doing something else. Is there any different advice you would give to them as opposed to the advice you just gave to people wanting to switch sectors? It's something about people not having had the experience before or have been out of the loop. Is there anything different you would add to that?
So one thing that I have seen, so say you're doing lots of consumer research and then you decide, actually, I've had enough of doing research around brands, and that you want to get involved in kind of social research. I would say a really good thing to have is experience volunteering in a passion, in a social research arena of some kind, whether that's working, at the Samaritans, doing, uh, you know, Childline, to be able to demonstrate your passion for that charity's cause, or even the charity sector in general. And I don't mean volunteering in a charity shop on a Sunday, but actually, going along to your community-based, finding a community-based project and being involved in it. That is and putting that on your CV, obviously, that is showing that you're actually really interested in becoming involved in that social, kind of social arena where, social impact, which would then, be able to, if you were to be invited for an interview, you could say, oh, I've worked in consumer research, but in my spare time, I also work on a community engagement project, and I volunteer and I help, singing for people with Alzheimer's, or, it's demonstrating outside, the work that you are, volunteering for. And that I have seen be successful, especially from private sector to the charity sector. So yeah, I hope that kind of helps.
I'm picking up on the person who was talking about coming into research as an early careers researcher, but at a later age. Is there any advice in you know what is a world without bias? How they can deal with that? And my initial reaction is you will have experience from somewhere else that's transferable.
Yeah, I always think that when, often people, not just as a recruiter, but, in life, when people say, oh, I've done this, this, and this, and I'm not really sure that it's transferable to something like research. Research is such a people person, focused, job, basically. And I would say that even if you've been like an admin assistant or you've worked in a school, it's all people facing. And that's what research is. So it's really thinking about your past experience and thinking, well, I've done this, but now I really want to get into social research. How am I going to do that? Belonging to the SRA and attending kind of webinars, and workshops, and all those types of organizations. I often point people to the SRA, or I often point people to the MRS as well. So, graduates come to me to say, I want to get into social research. So friends of mine's kids come to me and say, oh, I did politics as a degree and now I want to be a social researcher. What do I do? And it's, when I talk to them about their modules in their degree, they say, oh, I did a bit of qual and quant. It's like, well, put that on your CV. You must always demonstrate that you've had that experience. So dig deep and think, I've got all this experience. It doesn't really translate to social research, but you'd actually be amazed once you've really looked at, what you've done, how that would translate to a social research world.
I would suggest to that person to get onto our mentoring scheme as well, and maybe
Yes.
can help you.
Yeah.
Um, Abi, there are quite a few questions from people who are at SRE level or
Mm.
almost at SRE level. And again, I'm sorry if I don't do each of these questions justice. I'm trying to cover them all. So there's one question about what would actually trigger a move up to senior researcher, and how do you confidently evidence this? There's another question about actually, are there more opportunities? Sorry, is it highly competitive because there are just more people at SRE level? And then there's a question about, well, is it worth actually staying at SRE in social research? Is it better just to move on in an adjacent kind of sector if you get stuck there? Is there too many people there in terms of competition for the next level? So there's quite a lot of people online, obviously, who are at that sort of point in their career.
SRE level.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, what I last year I helped a number of there was about 10 kind of SRE, RM level people who wanted to move on, whether they were made redundant or they just decided that they wanted to move on. And they came to me, and it was a definite theme that I saw of advice that I was giving to people. And it was to think outside the box. I think that was very important. So a lot of them had come from an agency setting and said, "Oh, I want to move on to another agency, but I don't know if I'm going to be doing like for like, and I should have just stayed at the agency that I'm in. And but I want to, if I'm going to move, then I need to move up a stage. So, what advice do you give?" And my advice was to throw the net wide and really do, as you're researchers, really do your research on the different places that you could transfer your skills to. For example, there are foundations, there are independent kind of organizations that, would employ a researcher. You don't need to be an economist to work for the Work Foundation. There's lots of different analyst roles that are in fact very quantitative in nature and not kind of desk heavy where you're just sitting being an analyst. Throw the net wide, throw your job alerts wide. Don't just focus on research manager within a private setting, because there's membership and regulatory bodies, there's NGOs, there's charities, there's smaller organizations. I am and have become most recently quite a fan of Copilot AI. I never thought I would, but I really am. And, I often ask, and I've, helping my 18-year-old daughter put into Copilot, organizations around, X, Y, and Z in London that I could apply for. And it is amazing what and how helpful it can be. So, I would not just focus within that kind of, if you're agency, don't just focus in agency. If you're academia, don't just focus in academia. If you're charity, don't just focus in charity. Follow organizations that you like on LinkedIn. Get on LinkedIn and follow organizations that you like. It's really, really important. I spoke to one graduate who said to me that was following 150 different organizations, and then you'll get the alerts straight off when they are recruiting. And often smaller organizations don't give roles to recruiters, so you'll be first to see it if you follow them on LinkedIn. A LinkedIn presence is very, very important too. And be vocal and, say what your interests are. To touch upon before about the person who said, they were a little bit older and looking to get into research, get on LinkedIn and start to kind of say, I feel very passionately about, young people in mental health. I'd love to volunteer. And you'd be amazed at how many people, will get in touch with you via LinkedIn. I hope that's helpful.
That is amazing. Thank you. There are so many other questions that we haven't answered. I feel really uncomfortable not having answered them. So maybe we can try and find a way of giving some answers to
I'm
the rest.
happy, if Nina or Tina or Tom, if there's a way in which, the questions can be sent to me and then I can answer them and, send back.
Maybe we can work on them together, because I've moved between 4 or 5 sectors now, and I really believe you shouldn't just go by job titles. There's lots of surprising jobs behind some very unusual job titles. So to keep your mind open and your search wide is absolutely brilliant advice, Abi. I'm going to have to stop us there, which is a real shame, but because I do have to do the handover to the AGM. But I just want to thank you, Abi. It was so generous. Generous of you.
I really enjoyed it. And I do feel very passionately. And if people, if you want to ask me, then, connect with me on LinkedIn, show me that you have a LinkedIn presence, and, I will help as much as I can. I'm, now working at Charity People. There's lots of different opportunities at Charity People for researchers and evaluators, research officers, head of impact. So yeah, please, get in touch. And thank you as well to the SRA for giving me the platform to be able to kind of, run a webinar like this.
Thank you, Abby. And thank you all for staying, asking some really interesting questions. We'll try and answer them. We'll upload the recording because there was a lot in there, and you'll probably want to go back and check the slides and remember what the tips are. That'll be on the member hub. So just come back to the hub for that. I'm sure you'll get a notification. Watch out for any communications about the mentoring scheme, because that's probably where you will get a little bit more tailored one-to-one advice from somebody who's been there and done that. Also look out at our jobs board, look out for our LinkedIn profile and our CEO, Tina Hawkes' LinkedIn profile, because she often advertises or reposts jobs that aren't on our jobs board. And then we've got a whole host of resources. We've got a series of interviews with people called the SRA interview series, and they talk about their careers. We've got some historical blogs as well that we've amassed over time about people's careers. So please have a look at those. They may give you some inspiration and hope. So just before we wrap up, a final and important ask, if you can stay on for 15 minutes for the AGM. It's very short. I'd be really, really grateful for that, because we're going to vote in some trustees to continue the good work. It's a member-led organisation, so we can't do any of this work like putting on these webinars without you. So your support today is absolutely, genuinely appreciated, and it genuinely powers our work. So thank you all again. Thank you, Abby, everyone. I am going to wrap up and hopefully smoothly hand over to Ed and Tina so that we can start the AGM and voting people in.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Abby. Yeah, I mean, really, really fantastic session. Thank you, Abby. I mean, I must say, yeah, for people who are still on and navigating a journey. I mean, I myself have started my career in local government research. Probably the role I used to have is now an app, I suspect. So quickly technology moves on, but I started my role in social research in local government. I then moved into central government and government social research, and 3 years ago made the move agency side. So apart from academia, although obviously did a degree at some point longer ago than I care to remember. I've worked in all three, so really, really happy to, and occasionally do get people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, particularly in the government sector, asking me what it's been like moving into agency work. So yeah, equally happy to be reached out to on LinkedIn and offer words of advice. But our mentoring scheme, which got underway in the last year, is really fantastic. So I'd really encourage that too. But yeah, no, thanks, Abby and Lee, for a fantastic seminar. So fab, for the next 15 minutes or so, we are going to run through the governance arrangements for the SRA. My name is Ed Dunn. I am very grateful to be chair of the board of trustees. We have a fantastic and passionate bunch of trustees, of which Lee is absolutely one of the long-standing members currently of the board, and we're really very, very, very grateful to all of the trustees who give up their own time to help move things forward and help shape the SRA and what it offers to you. And I hope that all of our members, certainly from the feedback and the surveys that we do, overwhelmingly the response is positive. So we take that to mean that the trustees are helping to shape an organisation that meets your needs. But this is a way in which you get to help shape some of it too. Just a very, very quick reflection on the last year. I know some of you were at the AGM that we originally held. Unfortunately, we didn't have quite enough people to move forward to be quorate for the vote, but we do today, which is great news. But it's been a fantastic year with a lot of momentum. We launched a strategy, a number of key pillars, which I won't repeat now, but is absolutely available on the website. Part of our success as an organisation, which we do not take for granted in any way, shape, or form, is our financial position, which is generally extremely healthy, and so fundamentally important for us as a charity. And we know that many charities are struggling these days, but we are very grateful to be in a positive position, which has enabled us to invest in the membership hub. And I really hope that you're all making good use of that, because it is a fantastic resource which will only bring our community and network closer together to discuss careers, to discuss hot topics in social research, to discuss the challenges that we all face on a daily basis, from disinformation and misinformation and trust in research findings, and many, many, many more things. So that's been a fantastic effort, a really big investment for us, probably one of the biggest, and a fantastic amount of work has gone on behind the scenes from the staff team, a group of trustees who have helped support it, and also those members of the SRA that helped us soft launch. But I do hope that you're all making use of that. Our accounts are attached to the annual report, which was also circulated with the details of this meeting, or posted on the hub with details of this meeting. Highlights of that are that we, yet again, as I say, are in a really healthy position. Our membership numbers are just around 1,600 of you, which is absolutely fantastic. Provides us with, a real significant base to pitch our services towards, and we're really very grateful of that. This year so far, we've got our planning underway for the annual conference. I hope many of you will be attending that, and have certainly potentially already registered for that. We really look forward to that. It's a really real highlight of our year. Our seminars and training courses are as popular as ever. 90 or so of you today, really, really positive, and are really, really grateful to you for your interest. We hope that the conference will be packed out. It was sold out last year and the year before. We have a really great venue, and look forward to seeing you there. I want to say thank you to the staff team and everybody who works behind the scenes to make the SRA the success that it is. A number of volunteers, I thank them all in the last session, who helped put things together, like Research Matters, organise the conference, deliver the ethics service, put together the journal, help deliver training, shape all of our services, in particular the hub, as I've mentioned already. I won't thank them all again, but I did do that last time, and we're really very grateful for all of the support that our volunteers, staff, and trustees give us. In the last year, Dermot, Naomi, and Gillian have stepped down as trustees. We're really very grateful for the years of service that they've given us. We have Lydia Marshall, who is up for voting today as a replacement for them. Obviously, you can tell just from doing the maths, that still leaves some spaces on our board, and we're currently recruiting for a treasurer who will join us, Kirsty, who I'm also very grateful to for fulfilling the role as treasurer, is stepping down, but staying on as a trustee. But it gives us some scope to recruit a new treasurer. If you are interested, then please get in touch. Yeah, on the off chance there is anyone on the call who is keen to be our treasurer, then please do get in touch. But yeah, there'll be more to come on that in due course as we appoint that person. So moving forward then to the vote. I don't quite know how this is going to work. Is something going to appear on the screen for
Yes, Ed. We'll launch a poll.
perfect.
Yeah.
Brilliant, Nina, thank you. So we have a number of votes which we need to select a button for. First one, which I shall be abstaining over for obvious reasons. But no one else is allowed to abstain. It's either a yes or a no. No, of course not. You can abstain, but yeah, no, encourage you to vote. Is to re-elect me onto the board as chair. Our trustees serve for 6 years, and we or maximum of 6 years, and we adjusted the time periods in the last AGM. So that's why there's a difference in some of the periods here. So I am one of the trustees that's on a 2+2, a +2 maximum term, but some others have been on the board under old terms, and so that's why they can extend for a further year. But it will be a final year because they've already served 5 years. So please move through the voting as you see fit. Beth as a trustee for a further year, Rachel as a trustee for a further year, Daniel for a further year. Lee is going to stand for a further year, but also we'd like a vice chair. Lydia will be one of our new trustees, starting her journey with us. And then we have our annual report, which, as I say, was circulated, which we need to sign off. And also Field Sullivan, who acts as our independent financial auditor, needs to be reappointed by our membership. So yeah, I hope that you're able to vote. Give you all time to move through. Okay, Nina, do you want to? I can't see any progress, so we'll rely on you to call when you think the vote can close.
Yeah, we are at 25 of the 96 that have voted. So I think if you're fine with that, I can close the vote at this point.
Okay, well, that sounds good. I think we've had enough time to move through it all. Great stuff. Well, I'd like to thank you for staying on after a fascinating seminar just to help us with our charity governance. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event. And definitely, oh, there we go. We're going to share the results with us. Okay, go on. Let's go. Let's go for that. Okay, fantastic. Well, it'd be good. Be slightly embarrassing to be thanking everybody for voting and be voted off. So thank you everybody for confirming the re-election of myself and the other trustees, and for adopting our annual report. Pleased that we can reappoint Field Sullivan as our independent financial examiner. So we will crack on and continue running the SRA in the way in which it delivers for you all. So thank you, and we'll see you, if not at the next event, at the summer conference, hopefully. Thanks all. Goodbye.